Disney's live-action remakes are all the rage these days, igniting both the box office and the internet with every release. These remakes are controversial online, but are mostly successful financially, with the newest ones grossing more than $1 billion. There are many more remakes on the way, but you can't really fault Disney for fulfilling the clear demand for these movies. They saw an opportunity, and they seized it. But this wave of remakes is not the first time Disney has gone all in on a trend. It happened before, not too long ago. And unlike today, it didn't work out. In the early 2010s, Disney went through a short 3D phase, where it re-released a wave of classic movies into theaters. These 3D releases were a precursor to Disney live-action remakes, in the sense that they were quick and easy to make, and were seen as being an easy way to make a lot of money. Unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. In September 2011, Disney released a 3D version of The Lion King to promote the upcoming Blu-ray release. Now, re-releases aren't common today, but before home video was a thing, Disney would release their classic movies every 7 years or so. Of course, after VHS, that didn't make much sense, so the habit died off in the 90s. By 2011, re-releases were often limited time special events, rather than genuine moneymakers. And 3D was also declining in popularity at this point. It had lost its novelty, and the tickets were expensive. More and more people were buying standard 2D tickets instead. So no one was really expecting The Lion King 3D to be anything more than a quick Blu-ray tie-in. To everyone's surprise though, the quick promotion became a huge success. The Lion King 3D opened at number 1 with $30 million and stayed on top for 2 weeks. It ended up grossing $94 million in North America and $91 million overseas for a $185 million total. It stayed in theaters long after the Blu-ray release. It only cost a little under $10 million to convert The Lion King into 3D, and it had paid off immensely. Needless to say, this got Disney excited. They immediately planned a wave of 3D releases for 2012 and 13. The next one was Beauty and the Beast, which released in January 2012. This one opened number 2 at the box office with just $17 million. It ended up grossing $62 million worldwide, a far cry from The Lion King's numbers. Again, it cost less than $10 million to produce, so it still made money, though not as much as the studio expected. Undeterred, Disney tried their hand again with Finding Nemo in September. It also opened at number 2 with $17 million, and by the end of its run, it did a little better than Beauty and the Beast, grossing $69 million worldwide. Still, this was a disappointment. Finding Nemo was very popular in its original release, so the 3D version was a real letdown. Now, since this was a CGI film to begin with, it only cost $5 million to convert it to 3D. So this was still a win, though by this point, it was clear that the strategy wasn't working as it should have been. Disney tried Monsters, Inc. 3D next, in December 2012. This was the third 3D re-release of that year, which didn't do it any favors. It opened with just $6.2 million in North America, and ended up grossing only $50 million worldwide. Even with a very low $3 million production cost, it was barely profitable. In fact, Monsters, Inc. was disappointing enough that Disney cancelled The Little Mermaid 3D, which was the next one planned. And just like that, the 3D re-releases drew to a close. Each release had made less than the last one, causing the end of the series. The question here is, how did this happen? Looking at the box office numbers, it's easy to see the most obvious reason. Even if the production costs were very low for these 3D conversions, Disney still has to market and distribute them, which are considerable investments in their own right. It got to the point where the $50 million that Monsters, Inc. 3D made was basically considered a loss. The price of 3D tickets was also a big factor. It didn't make much sense for people to shell out for an expensive 3D showing when they could probably watch the movie at home anyway. Which actually leads to the biggest factor here, being the movies themselves. When you get down to it, The Lion King 3D was a unique success. It was the first of these 3D releases, so the concept was still new and exciting. It also coincided with the anticipated Blu-ray release, so it was pretty timely. And most importantly, The Lion King is one of cinema's biggest movies, and one of Disney's biggest franchises. Considering this was the first wide release of The Lion King since 1994, millions of people wanted to see it again, with their families too. It was always going to be relevant. On the other hand, Beauty and the Beast is a masterpiece of a movie, and it's still very popular in its own right. But it's no Lion King, and there was no 3D novelty this time around. Finding Nemo and Monsters, Inc. are also some of Pixar's top movies, but there was only about 10 years between their original release and their 3D release, so seeing them in theaters wasn't all that special. Not to mention that all these movies were already available on home video. Even factoring out price, this strategy could only go so far. The nature of special 3D releases meant that it only made sense to promote the biggest movies. When Disney mainstays like Beauty and the Beast and Finding Nemo are barely profitable, you know the strategy is only viable for a select few movies. The Lion King is probably Disney's biggest movie, so it fit the bill. The next few are popular, but just not at the same level. Other studios would discover this when they jumped on the 3D bandwagon. The Phantom Menace 3D made $102 million in February 2012. It was profitable, but like the case of Finding Nemo, it was disappointing considering the franchise this belonged to. Disappointing enough that Disney cancelled the next two Star Wars 3D releases after it bought Lucasfilm in November 2012. In April 2012, Titanic 3D grossed $343 million, making it the biggest 3D re-release by far, and the only one to beat The Lion King. All these releases were the cream of the Hollywood crop, the event movies. And yet, only Titanic and Lion King made an impact, which shows us how limited the idea was to begin with. By the time Monsters, Inc. 3D flopped, it was clear the strategy was dead. The Little Mermaid was cancelled, and Disney accepted defeat. In the end, Disney's 3D re-releases were a brief experiment that lost their shine pretty quickly. Even if they never did cancel The Little Mermaid, I can't think of much else they could have done. When 3D itself is a selling point, and people have seen the movie already, well, that's a tough sell, even with Disney's strong library. The Lion King was the only major winner, and that was mostly because it was The Lion King. Disney would move on pretty quickly though, and as we all know, their live-action remakes have proven to be just as repeatable and way more popular. Whether that's a good thing or not though, well, I'll just leave that up to you. What did you think of Disney's 3D phase? If you watched any of these releases, let me know what you thought of them in the comments below, and I'll make sure to respond. Thanks so much for watching. I'm on a mission to create the most comprehensive Disney YouTube channel. So if you liked what you saw, consider hitting that like button, and subscribing for more Disney videos. Well, that's all I have for now. See you later.